Welcome back to Queen's Mindset. If this is your first time joining us, welcome, welcome, welcome. Guys, can you believe it? This is season 3. Oh my gosh. I cannot believe that we are here already. And guess what? To start off this season, we're going to be meeting with some beautiful, powerful women. I can't wait to introduce them to you. And tonight with me, I get to speak to the lovely Nicole, and she's going to be sharing her story with us. Boy, are you in for a ride. Listen, Nicole, welcome to Queen's Mindset. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great, great, super great.
Awesome.
Really great.
Awesome. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us tonight. So, Nicole,
Pleasure to be here.
mm-hmm. And before we jump into it, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us who is Nicole, what you do. We want to get to know you a little bit better.
Okay, so I am mommy, mother of 5 biological children and 1 bonus son. So yes, 4 girls, 2 sons, 1 added to the family by marriage.
Mhm.
I am married to Ian. This year will be 11 years. It's almost unbelievable. 11 years, right? So 11 years in terms of marriage. Um, Children 25, 22, 17, 10, 7, sorry, 10, 8, and 8 months old, right? So that's my brood, that's my clan. I am a medical transcriptionist as it relates to occupation. I am now an author, a wife coach, a speaker as well. So many other things. I'm an ordained minister. Um, all of these things that I do that I've accumulated over time um, as I've journeyed. Been a Christian now for this year will be 25 years that I've been walking with the Lord, the best decision I've made yet. Right. So 25 years serving the Lord. And it has been life. And life has its ups and its downs and its swings in so many different directions. But I'm super grateful to be here now and still standing. It's a privilege to be here, to be able to share with you guys. I'm privileged.
Wow. Listen, Nicole, you do so many things. I'm like, wow, how did she find the time to do all of those stuff? Listen, guys, if you are now joining us, make sure if you have not done it already, subscribe to this channel. Make sure you have those notifications on so that you are kept abreast whenever we drop a new video. And also, comment down below because we want to hear your comments, send us some likes and everything. We want to know that you're in on this conversation with us. So back to you, Nicole. How do
Sure.
you find the time to do all of those things?
I don't get a lot of sleep. That's the first thing. So even though it's highly recommended, I don't sleep a lot. I try to make the very best use of my time.
Mhm.
Sometimes because I'm one of those persons who is working hard at moving away from perfectionism, right? It's something that I've used as a crutch for many years. And so I'm working hard at moving away from that. Outside of that, I'm always trying to dot my I's and cross all my T's. And so you learn as you grow in so many ways that it's okay not to be perfect. And so I don't know how to allow some things to slide to make up for other stuff, and that there's no real balance, but that you just make the most of each moment as it comes. You try your very best to prioritize what's important to you. So we ensure that the things that are key, that are important, comes in order of what is closest and dearest to what the vision for my life is. So whilst I don't always get it right, and the truth is I don't always get to please everybody, I don't get to show up everywhere, I try as best as possible to stay as close to the vision that the Lord has given for my life as possible.
Wow, that's important. That's important. I love what you said there. You don't get to show up everywhere. So it means that you
No.
have to be very strategic with your time because time is money and time is very important. So
Yes.
I like
Yes.
that one. So Nicole, there are some things that you would have been able to overcome. And I really want you to begin to I know it's a big story, so we want to take our time with this. Let's start from the beginning, like where it really all started for you, because I know there is a woman here who is just waiting to hear your story so that she can feel that encouragement to continue to press on. So tell us where it began.
It began with two people, two young people who apparently had no clue what they were doing. My father was young and was just I think I've not yet been to your country, but I'm
Mhm,
assuming that the setup is very similar to our island here. And so he would be coming from one end of the island to have met my mother at the other end of the island. But he did a job that would take him across the island. And so my siblings, him being an only child, didn't curtail him at all from allowing me to have siblings like this in terms of spaces apart.
mhm,
And so my mother became one of those persons who met him, and I was the product of that. Him not being ready to settle down, him not wanting to have um, any kind of long-term relationship because he was still exploring. And she apparently did not have the same expectations as he had. It wasn't just a passing fancy for her. And so I became the product of her brokenness, her not wanting to have a child. And she would tell me continuously, "I never want, well, I did not want you. You were not meant to be." And I say to persons, most of my children, I didn't want them. They didn't come at an appropriate time, but my mother treated me as if I were not wanted. So it's not just I didn't want you. You came at an inconvenient time. You didn't come in a good setup. But
mhm,
I was continuously reminded of that because of how I was treated. So it wasn't a thing where I was treated like I had value, and I was directed. The Bible would have given us the charge to direct our children as arrows. So even though I was a brilliant child, even though I had a lot of potential, this wasn't garnered and harnessed. I just grew up like weeds. And I'll say that. I was just occupying the space. You get a
mhm,
little food, and
mhm,
that's basically it. You weren't actually nurtured. And so because this was the system and the setup, I lived in an extended family household, and she was just a part of it. She herself had gone through so much abuse. And
mhm,
like so many of us women, we are looking for the escape in a man. And when he comes and adds to that, then a lot of times, if we're not very, very careful and intentional, then the children becomes the ones who suffer from this, because we tend to vent and they collect the residue of all of what is happening with us. And I became that child. So I was just in this space. And as far back as I can remember, I was being molested. So
wow,
I would, yes. So this person was very reputable,
mhm,
close, very close family friend. I mean, not just a family friend, but more like family,
mhm,
and very reputable, affiliated with the police because he right worked alongside the police, was a deacon, very prominent in the community, yes, and so on. So because of the person that he was, and I've learned over time now how to, if we were to label it, um, I'm learning now what narcissistic personality disorder is, and I can now identify what I was dealing with. And so um, because my mother was incapable of financially catering for me, and he to a large extent would contribute, this was used as the excuse for me to come to his house from time to time, and I would be molested continuously. I would be asked by another female relative of his to just allow me to come and play an older girl. I would be molested. So this was my story, and I could not dare tell anybody because I told you before that my mother treated me in a particular way. So if I dared to step out of line, this is an adult. This is somebody that is to be revered and looked upon, especially with the status that he held. And if I would dare, even for simpler things, I would be severely beaten. And so up to this day, I have not had that discussion with my mother because I'm thinking how broken she would have been or she would be to hear all of this. But this was what would have taken place. And so it segued.
How long was that happening?
Until he became incapable of physically managing anymore. So he was sick for a while before he died. So it was until he was, because I remember there was a point in time, because I was growing and it kept happening. And I remember his wife died and they know my grandmother and my mother would, be very, very instrumental in ensuring that his meals are taken care of, his clothes and all of that. And they would give me the stuff to take to him, not knowing. And I went one day and I brought the food and I was standing outside and I called out to him and he said, I'm in the bathroom, come. And I know what would have happened if I'd gone there. So I just left the food there. And I got a severe beating because he dared to come to say to them that I was being disrespectful, I was rude. And so I was beaten severely. And with this fear in the back of my mind, I did not think that there was a safe place at all that I could go to say this was what was happening to me. So even at 8, when I was raped by 2 other neighbors, much older, there was nobody to go to. There's nobody to tell. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not very hesitant in speaking out about all of these issues that women face, because I find that there was nobody that served as that voice, that served as that shoulder that I could have leaned on. And so I now want to be that voice. I want to be the shoulder. I have 4 girls. How do I not be the voice of a woman that is a girl that is broken and residing in a woman's body? How can I step away from such a role? And so that's why I take on this role with such passion. And then there was nobody. Later, my mother had to go out and became 4 of us now. No father. Still, so it wasn't just my father that was absent. There were no fathers for the other 3. And she had to go out to do whatever it was. It was domestic work. She had to sell in the market, whatever it was. They became my responsibility. And so I had to take care of them. At 9, 10, I had 4 other siblings that I had to care for. And the frustration, the having to grow up long before I became an adult, long before I was capable of so I really did not have a childhood. I don't know what it's like to play. I even when I would be at school and it would be time to play, I would go off into a corner, tell them that I'm not feeling well, because I didn't know how to be a child. And so I would be taking care of them continuously, just giving them crackers and butter every day because I couldn't prepare an actual meal, but they were my responsibility. And then with all of the pressures of life, all of the failed relationships, all of the struggles that she would be facing, my mother suffered a nervous breakdown.
Wow.
And not only now are my siblings my responsibility, my mother is my responsibility. I am now just entered high school. What do I do? How do I fill these prescriptions? How do I ensure that she eats? How do I ensure that they are taken care of? How do I do this? And so my answer came in the form of a man that was 12 years my senior, a married man. His wife was away, moved into the community, and he became my solution. And with this solution came the flip side. I was introduced to the dancehall culture. I was introduced to different types of drugs. I was introduced to alcohol. This was where I came to know all kinds of STIs, because he was very, very promiscuous. He was all over the place. And so a lot of STIs, things that I didn't even understand. I know that I can be very graphic, but I'm not going to go all the way. But I would, you as a little girl, 16 going on 17, 15, thereabout, you're just knowing that you're starting to smell a little way. You're seeing all of these signs, and you're wondering what is happening with you, and then recognizing that these are all, to the degree where today there are some damages that were caused that could not have been avoided because I didn't know any better. And so that was it for me. The beatings, the abuse in so many different ways. That was it. And but this is what I had to do. This is what I felt compelled to do. I knew nothing else. I would be dressed in my uniform because by then, when my mother would come around, she would not be able to send all of us to school. So it's probably 3 days for me or 2 days for me, and the other allowing the others to go for another 2 or 3 days. And so I would be going to school, wanting to go to school. I've always wanted to study. I've always wanted to be either a lawyer or a psychologist. This was always my dreams. I wanted to study. I love school. And I would be dressed in my uniform, and I'd stop at this man's house, pull up my uniform, pull down my panties, do what I had to do, collected what I needed to collect, and go off to school. And this was the story of my life for about 4 years. 4 years until I barely managed, scraped through high school, didn't get a chance to graduate because I did not go to the classes enough to accumulate the grades and everything that were necessary. And so I didn't get to graduate high school. Got into a program and started to work for the very bare minimum, but I would still be able now to take care of things a little better without having to do this. But the escape usually is that it's not just that you are physically entangled. There are the emotions. This is the first man for me. He represented the father I never had. He represented the love. So despite he would be beating me in 1 minute, he would be the only person telling me I love you in the next. I would not get a I love you from my father because I wouldn't see him. Like, I'd probably see him on the street when he came to Jamaica, and I'd probably not see him until another 5 years or so. So there was no I love you there. There was no I love you from a mother. And this was a person. So despite all of that, what was happening, this is how. And what I found is that, just to segue a little bit, what I found is that we come to associate love with all of this brokenness that we see. And so that is why it's so easy for us to gravitate to these broken men, because that's what we are cultured to know. We know nothing different. It's either, and we are seeking what Hollywood would present in these men, right? So we're looking at some point that he's going to turn from the beast into this prince, when in actuality, because we are so broken, this is what we have attracted. He can't transition into anything else because our brokenness attracts that level of brokenness. And during that point, wanting to get away from all of that and wanting something different, I started to work now and meeting other persons, and he became threatened by this. But I went out with some friends one night and wanting to go home. So as might be the similar setup, I came from the countryside of Jamaica, but I was now in the town, not the very street smart girl. So waiting on a bus to go home, and somebody drove up and offered me a ride. Of course, very, very trusting. Everybody's a good person, so I took the ride. We were driving along. I don't know the town, nothing about the town. Before you knew it, I was on a beach. And the man stepped out and said, "This is where we are. And if you decide to shout, if you make any sounds, then it is going to be a party. So it's going to be gang rape if you make any sounds." So that was my second rape.
Wow.
And
wait, hold
taken
on.
away.
Wait a minute. That's so the guy who lived in your neighborhood who had recently came in and moved in, he was 12 years older than you were. How old were
Yes,
you at that time?
16.
So you were like 16. So he
Yeah,
was
15 going on 16. Yeah.
so he was the one who was telling you that he loved you and then at the same time beating you. Wow.
So I didn't have any clothes, I didn't have any shoes. So if I got a new top, if I got a pair of shoes, it would be
Yeah.
this man buying it. It was this man giving me, if I were to get $100, it would be coming from this man. There was nobody else. So despite in 1 minute I have a black eye as a little girl,
Yeah.
this is the person who still provides. This is the person, if I turn up at his house and there's another woman in his bed, this will still be. So despite the brokenness, despite the hurt, despite the pain, I still cling to this person because he's the only person that I'm identifying love with. And
Mm,
I would have already be cultured to know that love is associated with abandonment and rejection and
mm,
hurt and pain. So naturally, I wouldn't be running away from this. Yes, it hurts, but
yeah.
what other alternative was there? And so
Mm. So
I
why did he beat you? What was his reason for beating you?
um first and foremost, I wanted more. I
Mm,
wanted him for myself. I wanted not
mm,
to turn up at his house and see somebody else in the house that I would just have
mm-hmm,
cleaned, the bed that I would just have. I mean, like one day, I spent the entire day doing spring cleaning, ironing his clothes, washing, and all of these things. And then by the time I left from my house, because it was pretty close to my house, by the
mm-hmm.
time I left from my house, remembering that I'd left something, went back, he was locked up with somebody else. I
Wow.
mean, I was a little girl,
Yeah,
16,
yeah.
17, and
Mm-hmm.
this, and all of this. And I turned up the other morning to complete what I did not finish the day before because
Wow.
I wanted to escape from my house anyway. Where would I go? So
Mm,
I turned up to that, and my turning up is basically saying it's okay to even treat you worse because you have nobody else. You have no other way out,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And so this was it for me. After a while, it really started to do some things to me psychologically, and I said, this is it, I want out, because despite my loving this person, um I can't do this anymore. And the fact is, I'm now working, so I'm earning a little bit where I can help to take
Mm-hmm,
care of them, and this is what started all of this. So in order to get away from him, I met this other guy, so
mm-hmm,
into a relationship. In Jamaica, we would say out of the frying pan into the fire.
wow.
So
Mhm,
I had no clue because this was Mr. Suave and he had it all together.
mhm.
And that was it. Wow, I got pregnant.
Wow.
No, coming from where I'm coming from, I'm not going to just walk away and leave despite everything. If the
Mhm,
man before was promiscuous, then
mhm,
this one was 10 times more promiscuous. If the man before was disrespectful, no, the other one would have been more discreet, because
mm,
the first one, I remember one morning we were going, by this time I was working and we were going to work, and he said to me, one of my friends met in an accident and we need to go to the hospital. Can we just stop at the hospital to check in? And I said, fine. But I said to him, make sure it's not one of your baby mothers, just jokingly. And
mhm,
lo and behold, that was what was happening. So yes, we stopped to look for his, but I didn't know at the time, so it was much more discreet. But
mhm,
during that time, he fathered 4 children,
mhm,
and he would always say to me, you are meant for more. So despite the beatings, despite the disrespect, he was always saying, you are meant for more. You are so beautiful. I don't want to get you pregnant, but he would be getting other persons pregnant in the whole
mm,
mix. So
mm,
while it would be a little bit more discreet, this one was very blatant. He would have the flings and carry on and come back and let me know the details of it. He would bring them to the house. Like one night I had to get up in the middle of the night, and when he was outside in my yard with this woman, I went outside and turned on the hose and I was to wet them. And I'm like, how did we
mm.
get here? What is all of
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
And that was it. That was the treatment. That was, I still did not know. And know where I am, where I am. as I said before, I'm able to identify NPD. So I know now what it looks like, and I know that this is something that I've been dealing with for a while.
Yeah.
And I remember one morning I got up, so I would cook the food and he would stack it.
Mm.
And he would just say to those his employees, see, she cooked the food and I'm not eating it. And it just, I have other persons and I will be standing right there. And
Wow.
one morning I got so frustrated and I said, I can't do this. And he started to chase me out and I'm saying, I just can't do this. And he
Mhm.
just started, my son was 8 months old, and he started to just throw all of my furniture, all of my clothes, all of the baby's clothes. He just threw them out on the front lawn this Sunday morning. That was minutes after 8. I had my period. The baby was a baby. So I had to go to one of the neighbors and they took me in for the day,
Mhm.
kept the baby. I went to get a moving truck, and late in the evening, I got something to go back. I had to go
Mhm.
back to my parents, to my mother and my
Mhm.
grandmother's house. And
Mhm.
you would think that after all of that, I would walk away. But I was
Mhm.
determined that my son would have a father. I
Wow.
was determined that my son would not experience this level of brokenness that I did,
You did.
not recognizing that I'm holding on to brokenness. I'm
Mhm.
desiring, and so he came for me and I went back.
Wow.
And it was not until
Mhm.
he actually held the knife to my throat. Yeah, I said, this is it. This is it. And I'm not
How
going back.
old were you at that time when he held it?
20, 2021.
Mm.
Yeah, 2021. And so that was when I met the Lord. That was when I walked away. So when I got saved, I hadn't gone to church in probably about 5 years. I just know that I felt this
Mhm.
thing that I had been feeling, because the Holy Spirit came when I was probably about 6. I asked my mommy, can I be baptized? She said no.
Mhm.
And just before I met the man before,
Mhm.
I got the Holy Spirit came again, and they said no.
Wow.
And it came again. Lord is so absolutely merciful, that Lord, and look, 7-year intervals, the Lord came again when I was 21.
Mhm.
And nobody told me, I don't know if you were told, that all of this suffering, challenges, struggles
Mhm.
were a natural part of Christian life. No.
Mhm.
I thought meeting Jesus was no my escape.
Mhm.
And I am just now
Easy
going to
peasy.
be, everything would come together. Everything would just fall into place.
Mhm.
But no, with all of my brokenness and everything again, I met a young man in the church,
Mhm.
got pregnant.
Wow.
In a few months after getting baptized, I got pregnant, and that was hard, because I met Christ and I was so very passionate. I was so very zealous, and everybody knew me. Know the transition from where I'm coming from, this dancehall girl, this little skimpy clothes and all of these things. I was saved. Like,
Mhm.
I was seriously saved. And all of this, and like I said to somebody the other day, I didn't know that Satan had his foot out and just was waiting to trip me up. He
Wow.
was just waiting and saying, like, no, you're moving too fast, you're going too hard. And
Mhm.
here it was in the middle of all of this, and I lost my job, where I wasn't able to pay my bills. And so I I had to move from where I live, because I did not want to be the girl who got married because I got pregnant in church.
Mhm.
And so I kept saying to the leaders, no, please,
Mhm.
allow me some time to rebuild my relationship with the Lord. Allow me some time. And it wasn't something that went down very well.
Wow.
The young
So
man
he,
took
he
back the
was a
ring.
leader as well. He was a leader in the.
We were both active in church. I was a part of the choir, and he was there long before, so he was more involved in other things. So whilst
Mhm.
I was asked to not participate in everything, he got to hold his offices. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, because of course I was the one who was coming. off the road. So I am the Jezebel. I brought this spirit. I was the one who was distracting him from operating in purpose. And so my not being cooperative and readily just go ahead and get married was a big issue. And so I was very sick. I was sick throughout the entire pregnancy. I was vomiting blood. I was all of these things. I wanted to get rid of the baby. And so I even made arrangements to have an abortion. And I'm saying, I can't carry this child. It was when I called a friend and I said to her, I need to have an abortion done. She said, no, I'm in the hospital now recovering from a botched abortion. Go ahead and have your child. And it was such a struggle because I wasn't able to pay my bills. I woke up one morning and the police were waiting outside for me with these high-powered weapons because persons were yes, all of these bills were to be paid. And I got notice from where I lived, and the young man just stopped assisting with any bill at all. So I had to again go back. I had to again go back home. Went back home when I was 8 months pregnant, still not wanting to get married. So he took the ring. We had actually, you know, gone ahead with the engagement and saying, okay, at a later time, as you know, we get to know each other better, as things progress, he took the ring and got married to somebody else in the church. And that was yes. So that was another thing that I had to sit there and deal with every single day. And so he refused to take care of us. My son had to drop out of school. Remember, I'd lost my job, so there was no income. When I had my period, I had to, because I would still take formula and diaper for my daughter. So I had to use her diapers. When I had my period, if I'm going on the road, if I'm staying around the house, I'd use like old clothes, and it got really, really rough. Got really rough. And so I'd leave the house and I would go to church and just lie down in the prayer room. I would just lie down in the prayer room and I would just lie down the entire day, and then I'd go back home in the evening. And I remember before I even had the baby, I remember one Sunday morning before I went back to my mother's house, I went to a church that was close to where I was living. And my son and I were there, and I was so hungry. I was pregnant. I was 5 months pregnant. I was so hungry. And I left the church because I knew if I left where I was living and I went into the town, I could get something to eat from somebody that I knew there. And so I found some coins, enough to pay my taxi fare, and went into the town, and I was walking down to where the lady lived. And I saw some of the brethren from the church. I was so excited now to see them, and they crossed over the other side of the road.
Wow.
I felt
I
felt like they crossed over to the other side of the road. Remember, I was a young believer. I didn't. So this for me, in addition to how the situation was handled by leadership, was a representation of how God saw me. This was what this was God himself dealing with me. That's how I felt. And so for the entire time while I would read the word and I would listen to the word, I wouldn't pray. I wouldn't talk to the Lord because in my mind, God was so upset with me. God didn't want to have anything to do with me. And so I refused to talk to him. And it was one day when I was in a taxi going into the town, and I was sitting in the taxi, and they would hear these praises from a grateful heart, that song. Each time I think of you, the praises start. I love you so much. And the tears just started, and I started bawling in taxi. And because, I mean, I wasn't saved for very long, but in the period of time between my getting saved and my getting pregnant, I would be in everything as it relates to God, because I knew where I was coming from. And I've always, even as a little girl, just had this desire to serve God. And so when I came all in. And when I heard the song, I love you so much, I just broke in the taxi, and I started just worshiping. And that was when I knew that despite my brokenness, despite where I was, despite everything that was happening to me, it didn't mean that God didn't love me, and it didn't mean that he had taken his spirit away from me. That was the revelation that kept me, and I started again seeking God. And he started talking to me about, by now I'd had the baby, and it took me a while to really bond with the child. I remember when I had the baby and her father came to the hospital. It took me a while. I would breastfeed her. But it to really bond with her, cuddle her, because when I look, and she looked so much like her daddy. It was hard. Can I tell you now that that girl is the Lord, and I'm speaking now to somebody who is here, and I'm saying to you, God is so strategic. It doesn't matter what kind of mistakes you have made. It doesn't matter how you would have stumbled. It doesn't matter how you feel as if you're at the end of it. God has a plan for your life, and he still declares that it is a good plan. It doesn't matter how much you would have diverted. It doesn't matter how much you would have messed up. God still declares that the plan that he has for your life is a good plan. And I'm telling you that that little girl that I wanted to have aborted, she will be 22 in July. And that little girl, when she came to the end of primary school, I got a call from the Prime Minister's office to say that they will be taking care of her schooling up to the end of high school. I did not pay $1 for her to go to school. Uniform, books, tuition, every single thing. And that same little girl, and I'm just speaking to somebody now who believes that you're at the end of it. Where God is infinite, he is the end and the beginning. There is no end to you. There is no end to your situation. All things work together for your good. And just before she completed high school, again, she got a scholarship, and she's now in her 3rd year of medical school at the University of the West Indies.
Wow.
This is the baby that I was going to give up. This is the baby that I could not see any way out. This is the baby that I cried tears over this pregnancy night and day. I refused to eat because I wanted the baby to die. I did all kinds of things to create accidents, to just not say okay to an actual abortion, but to get rid of this unwanted thing inside of me. And this no, not knowing that I was simply a vessel. And even in the brokenness, even in the hurt, even in the pain, even you getting pregnant for a married man, even you getting pregnant by your father, it is still that God has a plan for your life. I'm saying this to you who are watching, that you are not beyond the reach of God's grace. There is absolutely, ask the question, is there anything too hard for the Lord? And whatever it is that you are going through that seems so impossible, it seems as if you are in the darkest phase of your life, God still has a good plan for you.
Amen.
Still has. And my son and my daughter, we went through so much because the Lord would have told me, move away from the family house. He said, I am not able to bless you and your children the way I want to bless you. I want you to move away and build a heritage for you and these 2 children. Building a heritage. And sometimes when God gives you a word, you're thinking that, yes, this is it. Breakthrough has come. This is my time of jubilee. No. I entered. It's like you're entering into the promised land, but there are giants.
Yes. Come on now. Come on.
You enter into the promised land, but there is where you will have to go in and do the work. You will have to cut down. And a lot of us, why we go through what we're going through, we are gatekeepers. We are gatekeepers for the next generation. We are not called to fit in. We're not called to become just another person that is raised up in the generation. We are called to defeat the giants.
Yeah.
That our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, our mothers, those things that they could not conquer. And even today, I made a post on social, and I said, I have to stand. I remain standing so that my children will have a shoulder to stand on as they reach for the stars.
Yes. Yeah.
So it and I, like I said to a lady the other day, and she was becoming very, very frustrated with the process. And I'm saying, I understand why you're frustrated, because you are not understanding your assignment. And some of us are just called to crack the door open and hold it open and allow generations to pass through.
Right.
And when you understand that it doesn't start and end with you, that you are called to run one leg of the race, that you will run it with so much zeal and passion, and ensure that that which you are called to do, you do it with so much fire to ensure that they that come after you,
that's right,
would have understood that there's a legacy on which they can tap into. And so it is with that in mind. And as I looked at one of your questions there, I'm saying, what allowed you to come? It was my children. It was the children that I didn't want. It was the children who came in this kind of circumstance that allowed me to push, to not want to go back to where I'm coming from, to live a life, an exemplary life, to be saved and not allow a man to come to my gate for 12 years. They didn't know any man. For 12 years, I remained single. And we would sit down with that little money that I would be earning. I would sit, my son, my daughter, we sit in the middle of the bed, and we had a list. And one would have the money, one would have the list, and we'll be ticking off. This is for the light bill, this is for the water, this is for groceries, will be very last.
Wow.
I did not allow them to stay home from school because I did not get an education. The education that I wanted. So even if they were sick, I would medicate them and say, go to school, be sick at school, but you're not staying home. And there were some things that I would say to them. Even my daughter that is now studying medicine, when I would take her books and I would write Gabriel A. Bent. I would write Dr. Gabriel A. Bent. I would be speaking to my son, and I would say to my son, speak properly, stand up with your shoulders straight, because someday you'll be doing interviews. Someday you'll be your signature will be an autograph. Then you need to conduct yourself in a particular way. And even when persons ask, because we were living in the inner city, I had to move in order to afford living conditions. I had to move to an inner city community. And when we went in, somebody said to me, your son is going to become a part of the system. In no time than this, he's going to be in all of the. And I say, I have my own system. I have my own system. And there's absolutely no way. And the child that I could not send to school, when he left high school, he left with 8 subjects as a head boy, moved on to another traditional high school, came several times in the local newspaper, came out with another 5 A-level subjects, went on to university, and graduated as the first male in our family to have graduated from university.
Wow, that's history. Come on.
I'm saying where I started where I had one panty. And when I came home from school, I had to wash it. And if you know the fridge, the refrigerators that had the thing at the back.
Yeah.
So by the time I got up in the morning, it was still wet. And I had to put it on to go because there was just one. And some persons ask now that you always dressed up, your children are, yes, because there was a point in time when we could only change clothes on if somebody wore their clothes and passed it on to us. That was the only way we could wear. I would be in my house and somebody came, and this was it. Somebody would come. How many times we're there and the water gets disconnected, the lights gets disconnected. I remember at one point in time, the power company disconnected our lights for 2 cents, not 20 cents, 2 cents, because I had made an arrangement with them to say that I will be paying this amount each month. And I neglected to pay the 2 cents, and they came and they disconnected my light.
My God.
Months, every month after month, because I would have been paying light bills in the back, and I would be sitting there. And I remember at one point I was, and I was active in church. I was a prisoner. The only thing that I did not do in church was go into the pool and baptize somebody. Think of everything else in the church, and I would be doing it. Burying the dead, taking care of the funerals, doing the baby showers, doing everything. Think about it, and I would be doing it. I was so active in church that when it wasn't a church day or a church night, I went and cut a key for the church for myself.
Wow.
And would keep church, because I wanted to, one, stay out of trouble, lest I would be home and somebody called me on the phone and I tell them to come over. So I stayed at church. When I got tired, I went home and went to my bed.
Yeah.
2, I wanted to give the Lord everything because I had nothing else to give him in exchange. And I wanted so desperately the change that he promised me, that, Lord, I'm giving you myself. This is a seed that I've brought. I don't have any money to put on the altar. This is what I have brought. This is myself that I've brought to you. This is my sacrifice. And so I wanted to give him wholeheartedly, because I'm in an inner city community and my child is at risk. What can I give you? How much can I give you to ensure that my son comes out on the better end of all of this? How much can I give you to ensure? And I remember one there was this first fruit coming up at the beginning of the year. And I went to the credit union and I borrowed $25,000. At that time, $25,000 was a whole lot of money. It would take me about 2 years based on my salary to pay it back.
Wow.
And I said, God, this is it. I'm covenanting with you that you open doors. I want to live in my own home. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of the embarrassment. I'm tired of unsaved neighbors having to push a cord through my window so I can turn on a light. I can iron some clothes. I'm tired of this. I want my children to go to the very best schools. My daughter went to one of the very best, both of them, in Jamaica. And I covenanted with the Lord. And these were the sacrifices. And I'm telling you, it was hard. I had to go to the same credit union at one point to borrow money to get my hair done. It was hard. It was hard. And I went into a state of deep depression that lasted for about 8 months. I left my house only to go to work. When I came in, I didn't talk to the children. Let us know that I'm home and they're not supposed to say anything to me. I just go to my room and I would lock down. I don't answer my phone. I didn't go to church. I didn't go anywhere. If I didn't have to bathe, I didn't bathe. If I didn't have to brush my teeth, I didn't do it. I was just, because I was doing every single thing that I knew to do as a believer, and there was no change. But I would go and I would lay hands on persons and things would happen. I would pray for them and things would happen. But my life was stagnant.
Let's talk about it.
And I sat down one day at my desk at work and I'm saying, God, this is not making any sense. Grant you, I'm always looking nice because I'm always getting the second hand clothes and I take them to the tailor and I get them tailored. And and there were girls who would do like, if they did my nails or they did my hair, then I pay them the other month end. But I'm always, a person's take it for granted that I'm always well. Like this young lady who came home from church with me one night saying she's coming to raid my closet. And when she came home wanting to use my bathroom, I didn't have any toilet paper. I had to leave in the rain to go get toilet paper from somebody else. And this was the state of it. And I said, God, I can't do this. I really can't do this. I had persons telling me, you need to go take a man. And I had already covenanted with God. I said, I know what a man has to offer. So I want to see something different. I want to see that which you have promised. But this is taking a toll on me. This is not looking good in the face of my children, that you are the God that I'm serving. But this is it, Christmas, and we're having porridge. Sitting down, the 3 of us on the floor in the house, and we're having porridge for Christmas. This is not looking good. And I sat at the desk and I said, God. So even when you're upset with God and even when you don't want to be anything, because of the relationship that you would have built, Even when you're not doing what you're supposed to, you're talking to him about it. And I'm saying, Holy Spirit, tell me what method. Am I to cut my wrist? Am I to use a rope? Am I to take some pills? What method? Because this is it for me. I can't do this anymore. And as I sat there, the Lord started to talk to me. The Holy Spirit started to reason. He said, I told you to leave your house and give your children a heritage. Your son will be the first one to come home to find your body. Is this the heritage? Is this the legacy? Is this what you are planning to leave with them?
Wow.
And I said, okay, God. And it didn't lift. He answered, but he didn't go. And my pastor would come and she would just sit with me and she would just sit and she would just say, warrior. And she wouldn't ask me anything about anything. She would just sit there and she would just be talking about her business. She'd be talking about what happened at school. She'd be talking about her children. Nothing. She would just come and she would just sit with me. And one morning she came and she said, warrior, it's time. And I'm saying, pastor, and she said, no, it's time. She said, come as you are. And I had on some flip-flops, a t-shirt and a jean skirt. And I just went into her car. And I went to church and I sat at the back of the church. And I don't normally sit at the back of the church. I'm one of those persons that is continuously running. And I was sitting there and I had my head down. And the Lord said to me, to whom much is given, much is required. And I sat there and I started to cry. Because, I mean, like, how much more are you requiring? You've told me things like, don't even choose your friends. And I'm saying, God, you are overstepping your boundaries. This is just too much. How much are you requiring? When does it stop? And as I sat there, you know, she preached and everything, and she made an altar call. And she said, Nicole, come. And I went to the altar. And while she was on the microphone, she said, the Lord said to tell you, to whom much is given, much is required. And she handed me the microphone and she said, the Lord says you are to pray for yourself.
Wow.
Because your deliverance is in you. And I took that mic and I laid down on the altar. And I prayed myself through that 8 months of depression. Did I see it at the time? So many persons in the church were so upset with me because they tried to reach out. And I could not explain until one Sunday morning when I came back to church and, you know, started becoming reintegrated again and everything. And I was leading praise and worship. And the Holy Spirit said to me, share your testimony.
Wow.
And I started to tell the church. And the entire church fell out on their faces just in the presence of the Lord, just bawling. At the moment, I couldn't have understood what the sacrifice was for. And I'm still speaking to somebody that is here today. You don't understand what the process, it's a process.
Yeah.
And truthfully, we don't understand. I went to a testimonial conference on Saturday. And I'm jumping a little bit, but just to say to somebody.
Yeah.
And I was in the conference and I was set to testify, to share my story in the conference, all women. And I was set to tell them about the whole thing with my daughter and all of that. And the Lord, I saw this woman, a group of women walked in. And the Lord said, you are going to tell her your story.
Wow.
And I said, God, I cannot share that in an open space now. Because you would have thought that having gone through all of that and coming over now, not long after all of the depression and everything, within months I was married because I knew my husband for 10 years. Before, casually we were friends, we would go out in groups together, but my husband could have never been my husband because this was not the person that I was actually not interested in any man because of all that I would have gone through. And so, no. And I thought that when I got married, no, everything, if it didn't change when I got saved, then of course it's going to change when I got married. No more hungry, no more hungry belly.
Mm-hmm.
Bills could be paid. My life would be super great. I would be in hedonism night and day,
Yeah.
24/7 around the clock.
Wow.
Until lo and behold, the Lord brought me through another process. And the lady walked through the doors on Saturday. I'm saying, God, no,
Mm.
no, because this, yeah, I can talk about those other things safely because those are already gone. I said, no. And I went to the host and I said to her, could you turn off the cameras? Could we come off live? Because they were broadcasting live. And I said, could we? Because I knew that the Lord wanted me to speak to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, could we just come off live for a little bit? And once I'm through, you can get back on.
Mm-hmm.
I said, no. Can I tell you that out of what the Lord would have allowed me to share on Saturday, several wives
Mm-hmm.
reached out to me wanting to be nurtured, to be coached, to be mentored.
Wow.
Because as you go through,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm saying, guys, it sounds very cliche,
Yeah.
oh, don't give up on God.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give up on God. Don't be, and somebody would, one of the other questions that you asked was, did you ever feel like giving up? I felt like giving up today. And
Wow.
that's how life is. It
Yeah.
will hit you, like hit you so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Life will hit you with some stuff that you would think that there is no God. Like you start
Yeah.
questioning yourself as to whether this thing that you're holding on to, if it's really a lie or not.
Mm-hmm.
Life will hit you hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had to even today be speaking to myself. I had to be speaking to myself because here it is, the devil is always willing and ready.
That's right.
And I came into marriage and I was, I've said it before, I've always wanted to study. And I've tried over the years to study. And when I finally, I did 3 years, I did a diploma in
Mm-hmm.
biblical and pastoral studies right after I had my daughter. I went into Bible school. And that was another process. One night I was at school and I asked somebody, can you please pray for me? And he came and whispered in my ears and said, girl, if you're hungry, you're hungry. Don't ask for prayer, ask for food. I
Wow.
was so hungry.
Mm.
I was so hungry. And so I did 3 years of Bible school, not knowing what my children were going to eat, not knowing how things, I didn't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
Persons would just go to the admin's office and come back with a receipt to say we have paid a portion of his school fee. We would have, that's how I went through 3 years.
Wow.
And that was leg one. And I tried for many, it took me 9 years to complete a 4-year degree.
Wow.
9 years. 9 years, 4 institutions to complete a 4-year, which should have been a 4-year program.
Yeah.
I'm
Wow.
saying to you guys, there are no impossibilities
I'm
in God.
telling you.
There are absolutely no impossibilities. 4 years, 4 institutions, 9 years, a 4-year degree.
Wow.
And all of that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I got married and I'm saying, all right, while getting married, I was in the process of completing this program. Here this child came, another
Mm-hmm.
unwanted, another unwanted child. Because yes, she could have come, but probably later in the no,
Mm-hmm.
but not no,
Yeah.
because I was finally in this space.
Mm-hmm.
So I completed Bible school, did the medical transcriptionist diploma. Here it was, did radiography, and I was on a roll. I was finally coming into that place. Despite the struggles, I was coming into that place. So
Mm-hmm.
marriage was supposed to just come now and just gel everything together. And I got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. Started back.
Mm-hmm.
Got pregnant again.
Wow.
Had to drop out. And as we finally, the house came and the different things and things were happening, but you were
Mm-hmm.
so preoccupied, you would have been preoccupied with having these little children and everybody being around, a bigger house. A stepson is small as well, and just trying to get your mind wrapped around everything, buying the house, setting it up, all of these things.
Mm. Wow.
And it was when things started to just kind of settle down, the
Mm.
last baby was 3, that I was lying at the side of my bed one night and I heard when the Holy Spirit said to me, pain for purpose.
Wow.
I'm saying, God, you mean the purpose of pain? He said, no, pain for purpose.
Wow.
And I'm saying, what could this mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it was not long after that that I found out that my house was not, my marriage, my husband, my situation was not what I thought it was.
Wow.
And I'm still not, there's still a lot that is still happening. So in
Mm-hmm.
terms of details, no,
Mm-hmm.
but it blew my mind. I mean, I've gone through stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but this was when you are now in a space where you're saying, okay, God, I've done everything that I know I'm supposed to do. So
Yeah.
this where I am now
Mm-hmm.
is where I'm supposed to be, and I'm supposed to be reaping the rewards. I'm not supposed to be being ripped apart. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be questioning my sanity, and I would be walking around. As a result of this thing, I started walking around the house. And you know what happened just before all of that? The Lord took me out of my job. I worked in this place for 9 years, and the Lord said it took me 2 years because I'm saying, God,
Mm-hmm.
I've been working from I'm 17. I know what hungry is like. I'm not letting go of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Until I got a call one morning and the Lord said, unless you move, you've
Wow.
heard me whispered, now I'm going to shout. So you
Mm.
better move. And
Wow.
I was home. So it's like everything familiar had been pulled out from. No, it was my home, my marriage that was being invaded.
Wow.
My job is gone. Everything that felt like any form of security.
Mm-hmm.
And I started hearing voices. And I started just walking around the space. And I remember I'd be here. I remember I was here one day and a lady called me. I heard the tooting outside. And when I went, she said, I was taking my daughter to school and the Lord said to come and just lay hands on you. I was literally losing my mind. Let me see if I can find it. I found it the other day when I was going through some stuff. This was one of those things.
Wow.
And this was 2019.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of those things. It's June 2019. We're in June now. That I got, and I would be taking this. This is a sleep aid, and I would be taking this and 2 others that I would be mixing together and still can't sleep. And I would feel like things are crawling in my head. And I went for the CT scans, and I went, and my blood pressure would be spiking. I went to the doctor in 1 week 3 times,
Wow.
trying to figure out what was happening to me. I was going crazy in my space.
Mm.
The enemy had invaded my home,
Yeah.
and everything was. And I would be saying to my 5-year-old Azalea, please bathe Amore for me, who is 3. I
Mm.
was so broken. I could not. I could. It's almost as if I would be lifting my hands now, but I couldn't because it's like there's no life left in me.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I said, Azalea, feed her more for me. Could you just give her something, give her anything? Because the baby would be sitting down crying, wanting something, and I can't move.
Mm-hmm.
And can you believe that I was there one day sitting in my backyard and a friend called me from overseas? She's in Cayman Islands, and she said to me, what's happening? What are you planning to do? And I'm saying, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah.
She said, you need to go and write a book. And I'm saying, write a book?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the last thing that I can't even get my thoughts together.
Mm-hmm.
But to write a book?
Yeah.
She said, I mean, not what was happening, but pour out.
Mm-hmm.
Because what was happening, I wasn't even able to process it correctly. Moreover, to write about it.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so I started just,
Mm-hmm.
on her advice, I started writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember somebody, I was describing the kind of life that I wanted to live, and he said to me, that is not real, that's just a fantasy. And so
Mm.
I decided to write my book, Shake Those Labels
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
Live Your Fantasy. Whatever it is that you're telling me that I'm not able to achieve, whatever it is that you're telling me that I'm too bound by it, whatever my mother said, my father said, I would have said to myself, whatever stories I would have accumulated over time because I would have gone through all of these painful places.
Yeah.
I am going to be shaking those labels
Mhm.
because I have a fantasy. And the fantasy would be like Cinderella, a girl going to a party and leaving, going one way and leaving another, and a shoe, somebody is walking around trying to get a shoe to fit and changing her entire life. That's what a fantasy is. It looks so impossible. But the question is asked again. The fantasy was such to the degree that Sarah laughed.
Wow. So true. So
Yes.
tell us where we can, I know we're running out of time right now, but tell us where we can purchase your book and what you're working on right now and how persons can reach out to you.
It's on Amazon. So for those persons who are not, one, for those persons in Jamaica,
Mhm.
I can be contacted directly. And there's a local pharmacy
Mhm.
in Spanish Town where it's at, as well, La Vega Pharmacy. And for those other persons who are overseas, can get it on Amazon. So this book, Pain for Purpose,
Mhm.
I've not actually written that book yet, Pain for Purpose, but the movement that I have,
Yeah.
that umbrellas some other things that I'm working on. It's a Pain for Purpose movement,
Mhm.
learning to manipulate your pain for purpose.
I love
So
it.
now I have the Labor-Free Wives Society where I walk with women who are going through difficult marriages to
Mm.
just say to them, you are still worthwhile. You
Yeah.
are still beautiful. You can still accomplish that which God says you can.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how broken your heart is. It doesn't matter how broken your home is. It doesn't matter how broken your situation is.
Yeah.
You can do this.
Mm.
If I can do it, you can do it. And watch me do it and follow what I'm doing. It's possible.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what broken space you're coming from. So that's what I do now. And this weekend I have um what I have quarterly retreats. So I'll take the women away for a day, call it the
Mhm.
Labor-Free Wives 1 day intensive healing retreat.
Mhm.
And we would just lay down on a lawn,
Mhm.
in a secluded space, and they just lime. We drink some wine. We have speakers coming in. We do some coaching sessions. Persons are able to ask questions, bounce things off of us. Persons just come and lie down and sleep. Some persons' homes are so toxic that they just want to get away for the day to sleep.
Wow.
Persons just come and just lie down and sleep. So to do things a little differently, because I like different verbiage, just
Yeah.
do things a little differently. I would normally do master classes for wives online.
Mhm.
So this coming weekend, we'll be having our very first master class in the gardens,
Mm.
red lipstick
Mm.
edition.
I
So it's
love.
a cocktail setup,
Mm.
coming, having some drinks, some orders,
Mhm.
listening to some nice classical background music,
Mhm.
and just, just liming and learning and getting an opportunity to come out
Mhm.
into the open space and just come into a space that is different, relaxing and rejuvenating.
So how
So
can we
that's
find
what
you?
I'm in Jamaica,
Mhm.
right? For those persons who are in Jamaica, I'm in Spanish about to contact.
Mhm.
My telephone number is 885-91. So that would be 876-885-9199. I'm on Instagram as Nicole A. Kenwood. I'm on Facebook as Nicole Kenwood-Brown. I usually do weekly lives just to look at some topics like, why should I pray for my wicked husband? How
Mm.
to rebuild my self-confidence after an affair, different topics like these, things. My husband does not satisfy me anymore. What do I do? Am I still just these kind of things that after you have gone through certain experiences and after you've walked through a certain space,
Yeah.
you want some questions to be answered.
Yeah.
And so I'm the voice. I'm the shoulder that you can lean on
Yes.
as you reach for your stars. I'm the shoulder that you can stand on. I am the one who have decided that I will hold the door open so that others can walk through.
Wow. Wow, Nicole. We could have talked all night. Definitely enjoy me. all the time now, but I definitely enjoy talking to you. I hear your story. I'm like, wow, and I know there's much more. There's so much.
Oh, yes. So
There's
much
so
more.
but this little bit that you were able to share with us tonight, I am very sure that a woman, women who are here now and they're watching, they're listening to you, they have been encouraged. You know, they can see that, you know what, if Nicole did it, I can do it too. I can overcome this thing too as well. I don't have to stay in darkness. You know, I can look forward to the light and just start moving and follow the voice, you know, and be able to achieve and receive the things that God already me to. So I just want to thank you for your level of openness, you know, and being so transparent about your process and the things you've been able to overcome and conquer as well. So thank you so much for, you know, for sharing with us tonight. We definitely enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Definitely. So, guys, you just heard it right here. Nicole just shared her story. Make sure you do not keep this information for yourself. Make sure you share this with another woman because you don't know. Just because they didn't say that they're struggling does not mean there's not a struggle. So, make sure you share this video with them and tell them, share it with another friend because we really want you guys to hear what she has shared. So, that if there's anything that she said that makes any sense, that can help you in any form, we want you to have that information. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And continue to be commenting down below, continue to like, and continue to share. I will see you on our next episode. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Goodbye.